The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel is Pat Scott. Hey, Pat.
Hello there.
Father Andrew couldn't join us tonight. He's a little under the weather, I think. So we wish him well. Hope he gets well soon. And it'll be just the two of us. And we've got a potpourri of stories for you tonight. We don't have a main topic per se like we sometimes do. But we got a potpourri of headlines. We're going to be discussing some interesting stuff. Before we get to that, I do want to tell you all about another show on the StarQuest Network called Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. If you have not yet discovered Jimmy's World, definitely need to check that out. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at mysterious.fm. And check it out. We got some great episodes lately and a really cool one coming up on Friday called about announcing dreams.
Ooh.
Yes, it's very, very interesting. You'll be interested in this one, Pat, because your daughter has a large role in this one. She does lots of voiceover work in this one. So,
oh, cool.
So, all right, let's get into it. Our first headline that I want to talk about is Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, has been sued by California and other states. I think a grand total, I think, of 41, pretty much almost every state. I don't know what the others are doing, but
they hadn't read the headlines yet.
Yeah, they'll be jumping on soon. And the majority, the basic claim is that Facebook and Instagram exploit young people for profit and feed them harmful content. They say that the lawsuit says, that's the Facebook's attorneys. They're defending them, but they claim that they're knowingly preying on vulnerable young people to boost profits. And a lot of this is based on the whistleblower testimony in 2021 by a former Facebook employee who testified before Congress about how internal studies at Facebook and Instagram showed that many adolescent girls using the photo sharing app were suffering from depression and anxiety around body image issues, and they weren't going to do anything about it, and so on. What do you think of this lawsuit? Do you think it's kind of, is it Facebook's fault? You know, should it be parents who be more in charge of their kids, watching their kids? You know, Facebook says they give lots of tools to kids and parents and whatnot. What do you think of this?
I think there's a balance. I think that in the past they've used a lot of psychological tricks to keep you scrolling, to have things in the feed that just kind of self-reinforce whatever you're looking at. It keeps giving you more of. If it was something that made you upset, it keeps giving you more of that. And I'm sure that's true in the young kids area too. But I think that the parents have a greater role to play in educating their kids about what's possible and not possible on social media. And just to learn how to safeguard that is not society's issue. You know, it's more the parents' issue to kind of help learn, because it's not just social media. There's a lot of things out there that kids have to be cautious and learn how to deal with. But on the other hand, I know that Facebook has been dinged for, using psychological gambling style techniques to kind of hook people.
It's kind of like the whole cigarette argument. It's like, it's one thing, we know cigarettes are harmful, but if the tobacco companies are pumping more nicotine in to make them more addictive, yeah, that's on them. And it's kind of the same way. I feel like a lot of these social media are intentionally making their product more addictive, and we're all suffering, but young people especially so. And I kind of feel like I'm a dad of two teenage girls, so I have a what is it?
A stake?
A stake in this hunt. I don't know, whatever the idiom is. I think maybe we shouldn't allow kids under the age of 18 on social media. Maybe that should be banned. Because right now it's like kids under 13 can have social media accounts if they have explicit permission from their parents, which, that's a little baloney that, they can
get around it.
Yeah, bring the phone to your parents and have them sign in. I'll just do it for them, that sort of thing. I think maybe they shouldn't allow people under the age who aren't adults to be, because these are it's almost like a dangerous tool. Yeah, they're powerful. And frankly, adolescent still developing brains I don't know if they're ready for it. That seems extreme. I know that's kind of very non-libertarian of me, but I don't know. It feels like these are harmful tools for young people.
Yeah, I agree. That in like the cigarette commercials in the past, as you mentioned, they used to use things like cute cartoon characters or things like that were aimed at kids, and so therefore it would be hard to say, "Oh no, we're not pitching for kids,"
Right.
And in many ways, the X and Instagram and all those things are geared toward younger ones. The older people aren't really using them near as much as the younger ones.
In some ways, it's like, it's not that it's the inherent addictiveness of the apps really that are the problem. It may not be that they're intentionally going after kids, although I wouldn't put it past them, but it may also be just that the way the algorithm works is it doesn't care who you are. It's going to make itself as addictive as possible to you. And when it's kids, it makes it even worse. And we've heard there are some statistics about anxiety and depression and other issues and suicidal thoughts among young people. Yeah. It's skyrocketing, and a lot of people are kind of correlating it with the rise of social media.
Yeah, I can see it. And so, the problem is trying to say under a certain age, how do you enforce it? And because anybody can sign up and give their age as something wrong and get in that way. There's really no controls except for the ones that the parents, monitor when they're setting it up, etc. There's not really a way to fix it. There are certain
ways that companies can verify age, like adult versus minor. Like you can, like they take your information. They can determine if you are. There are databases, ID databases that I think are government run for certain things, like alcohol, firearms, that sort of stuff. There are things that I'm trying to remember now. It's off the top of my head, but I feel like that there is these databases of government information that allow them that they don't get free reign in it to dig in it, but they can say, is this person an adult? And they can get a binary yes or no. Which, well, I didn't realize that. Yeah, it would be, or if there isn't there, maybe if these states want to ban kids from being on these platforms, they could make such a thing available. Of course, then you always have those edge cases of adults who get misidentified as being young, or the person who just turned 18 and the database hasn't caught up yet, and those sorts of issues. I don't know. A lot of kids aren't even most kids aren't on Facebook anymore. Anyway, that's not a kid place. Like you mentioned, it's TikTok, it's Instagram to maybe a lesser degree. Snapchat is still out there. But a lot of kids are even just in texts and Discord and in private servers now anyway, which is probably better, frankly. I don't know. I mean, it's not monitored, but it's not manipulated by an algorithm either. I don't know. Again, I think it comes back to parents. And this has been one of the hardest things having to navigate is, my 17-year-old she has a phone, which she got in the last, year and a half or so as she needed it. And then my 15-year-old daughter, we realized she kind of needs a phone now too, because she's involved in, activities where you're expected to be able to communicate with the other kids. It's like scouting. And now we're having the same thing with the 14-year-old and 12-year-old boys, where they're in scouts. Their patrol leader communicates with the patrol via texts, and it's just assumed that everyone's going to have a phone. And it's like, I don't really want them to have, they have non-data, non-active phones for, doing music and that sort of thing. but to get phones with phone numbers and access to the internet, and I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's hard. And there's the two opposite poles of, censor everything and monitor everything and keep your eye on everything. And now, the kid doesn't have a chance to develop their own good sense through guidance. And on the other hand, just having it loose that no monitoring is done. So there's got to be a balance in there.
Right.
That you've got some ability to help them choose the right things and to not go beyond some limits. Yeah.
And screen time on the Apple devices or the Google equivalent is good to a degree, but it's not granular enough. It doesn't go far enough. And we've had issues with one of my kids who kept downloading these games and staying up late all night and just is addicted to it. And it hurts my heart to see him struggling to obey, to do the right thing and having to give into this addiction basically to downloading these games. And I put up the barriers. He figured a way around it. We took the phone away and said, you can't have the phone unless, you obey. And we eventually build up trust again and we give it back. And we've been okay for now. But there's other things like, my older daughter, my 15-year-old, she loves playing Minecraft. And we got her set up on a Mac now. And we have screen time on it, but screen time can't regulate Minecraft because it's a Java app.
Oh.
And it's like, and I've looked it all up, all this stuff, and you can set up an Xbox account and regulate it through the Xbox parental controls, even though it's on a Mac. And I'm like, I can't jump through all these hoops to get this. And so we're just working with her to like build up some discipline and keep it off, not running on the computer at all when she's, doing her schoolwork during the day and that sort of stuff. It's hard. This stuff is, it's not stuff my parents had to deal with me, I mean, we had other issues, I suppose, but this is a whole different world. And where, it's a struggle for everyone, I think.
Yeah. Golly, that is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. The worst I had when I was growing up was my mother not wanting me to read the science fiction books my older brother had, because of the lurid covers.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
That was the worst it was.
I know. Oh man. So we'll see how that lawsuit goes and whether it makes any difference in things. And frankly, I think at this point, it's really up to parents. The government isn't gonna save us with this one. So speaking of things that aren't going to save us, ChatGPT can now browse the internet. So the OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, says that it is no longer limited to data before September 2021. Anyone who's used ChatGPT may have run into this message from the AI saying that, I can't do that for you. I only have access to any information up to September 2021, which is when the original large language model was built had been available. But now they've modified it so that it can search the internet for more current data. So especially if you have a paid account, you can go to ChatGPT and ask it to, what is the most recent reviews for mountain bikes,
printers, whatever,
yeah. Ask it for consumer price indexing data, or it won't be necessarily up to the minute information, but it will certainly be very recent, within maybe days or weeks or a month or something like that, which is better. Pat, do you use ChatGPT for much at all?
No, I've played with each of the different ones out there for a little bit, but especially the fact that the ChatGPT, does the free version still not get you to the internet? Is that correct?
No, I think the free version will at this point. I have a paid version that I use. Yeah.
And when I checked a couple of weeks ago, it was only the paid version that could get to the internet. Okay. So, but I've used Bard and I've used the Bing AI chat, and those both can get to the internet. I don't tend to use it a lot, but trying to say I want to give a customer some instructions on how to do certain things, I might ask one of the AIs to tell me how to do X, Y, or Z on a Mac or a PC, and it'll give me an outline, and then I can flesh it out from there, or modify it, or get rid of the bad parts.
Right. Yeah, because it's not perfect yet. So
nope.
It is available today to Plus and Enterprise users, so the paid accounts, and will expand to all users soon.
At some point.
Whichever soon is. But yeah, it's not a substitute for being able to Google a thing. I suppose, if you're not very good, if you haven't learned how to use a search engine very well, using an AI, a large language model, to help you search for things on the internet could be useful. But it's good for lots of different things. It's just sometimes like the basic OpenAI interface is so blank, you don't know what to do or say. You need some guidance. And there are some tools out there to help you, give you some ideas of what you can use it for. I'm seeing more and more of these software tools that interface with it come out. So it's interesting.
And both Bard and the Bing AI, you type a search in, and they'll give you the regular search with, here's certain websites that but they'll also give you a generated AI discussion of it with embedded links. So you're not left kind of cold. It's kind of guiding you in how to use it. And so I've enjoyed both the Bing and the Bard for that. They kind of are good for different things, but they've been helpful.
That's cool. I'm curious to see how they grow. I mean, they're not the danger that everyone thinks they are. Not yet, anyway. They're not the ones that we have today are not going to take anybody's jobs. So we're a long way from that. Just even the writers' jobs. They're probably taking the jobs of people who've been composing spam bait articles on websites. That sort of thing. But they're not that. But they are a useful tool at this point.
Right.
They're a useful help. I use it every day. I use them every day, helping me with, as I've said before, creating web pages for our podcast episodes, coming up, summarizing the episode content into a really useful, short, tweet length post that's
blurb,
dynamic and engaging, that sort of thing. And I found it to be very useful for that sort of thing. So our next headline is from the Wall Street Journal, and it's an interesting story about this group of scientists who are using technology to track down bad research. In case you don't know, there's an epidemic of bad science research and bad scientific studies out there, and some of it may be innocuous mistakes, but a lot of it is got to be fraudulent data. They fudge the data. They omit stuff in order to make their conclusion that they want be true, and that sort of thing. One of the things that surprised me about this article is I never realized how many thousands of scientific studies are published every year. Like, it's thousands. There's thousands of scientific journals, and each one of those is going to have a dozen articles a month or quarterly. And you know what I mean? It's just like, it's crazy how many there are. One of the things that they've, the numbers in this story is the rise in the number of retracted papers, scientific papers. In 2002, there were 119 scientific papers retracted due to faulty data, conclusions, some problem with them. So 119. In 2022, there were 5,500. Like, wow. And one of the things they say is, these guys who are doing this work, which is part-time for them, they have, day jobs. But one of the reasons they do this is because people have lost faith in science. Although, I don't know if people have lost faith in science. They certainly lost faith in scientists, which we've seen in recent years. What'd you think of this one, Pat?
Well, I can see where there's a lot of stuff that I know that there's been several things that, what is it, the Science Babe or whatever has gone after saying, look, these aren't valid, and it helps people to learn what's valid and what is just faked or is wishful thinking. I think that there's, as you say, too much has gotten passed, maybe just with laziness or somebody wanting to get their name in print or just wishing that they had somebody to fund their stuff so they get it out there. I really am glad that they're cracking down on it.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, the thing is the more bad data that gets out there, the more bad science gets out there, the worse it is, because it can lead to things like bad conclusions by government lawmakers. Oh, look, these studies all say this, so we should do that. But if the studies are fraudulent, they're making government policy based on nothing. Or, you can imagine all the other ways that bad scientific journals articles can cause harm. I mean, this is people cite journals, studies as evidence when making arguments about all kinds of things, and you can ruin an industry with you get our studies that come out and say eating hamburgers will kill you, and the next one says eating hamburgers is perfectly fine. In fact, it will extend your life. And like, well, what's going on here? Like, which one do I believe? They can't all be right. So,
right.
I mean, there's a kind of a problem just with in the scientific journal, the science profession as it is. There's too many studies. There's just too much of this stuff out there. And then nobody reads the actual paper. The journalists cite out of the executive summary and, the blurbs handed to them by the PR people at the university, you know what I mean? And that's handed off to us as if that's gospel truth. It's science, and I think all of this is a problem. And then you get the evidence that a lot of these people are, that not everyone, and maybe not even a majority, probably not even a majority, but a lot of people, 5,500 journal articles last year, are faking it or doing something wrong. And that's problematic.
Are using poor procedures and not getting peer review at the time when they're doing it, so they just keep on going and make bad conclusions.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah, power to these guys. I should name the guys who are doing this. There's three behavioral scientists who behind John Simmons, Leif Nelson, and Yuri Simonson, who have a blog called Data Colada instead of Pina Colada, Data Colada. And so they're three of the people that are cited in this. They're doing a lot of the work. There's also a woman scientist who specializes in. It's interesting. Some of these people, the people specialize in finding images in microbiology studies that have been doctored. Like that's what she does. She finds the doctored images because she's really good at these images. It's like, okay, that's fascinatingly narrow. Yeah. And she does that. And, there's a number of other people do it. So power to them all. Grateful to them for doing this thankless job.
Well, and I saw something recently where there was a work being done to try to make sure that pictures that are published on the internet, that artists are trying to make sure that their stuff isn't being picked up and used erroneously. And so there's something about poisoning of digital images, so that if that it's like they've got an unseen watermark or something, and somebody tries to take it and use it, they can prevent it.
So this was an article. Yeah, it's not in our list here, so I don't have the article itself, but I remember reading it about a poison pixel. They can put a poison pixel in, and it's specifically to stop the AI image generators from using this artist's work as part of its model building.
Right.
So the data it gets from it will be garbled because of the poison pixels. I'm not sure how it all works. I didn't see the
No,
details.
me neither. But it sounded interesting and it sounded positive because I
Right.
know there's so many people that are saying, well, how do we know if it's AI or how do we know that it's not taking and plagiarizing? And so to have AI be able to detect that AI is being used, that would be helpful.
Yep.
And those things like that would be, we need the safeguards.
Right. Yeah, with AI, the deep fakes getting so good, we need help in detecting fraud and deep fake and all that other stuff. We need good hackers for good is basically what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move on to the rest of our headlines, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Lenny B, Rachel F, David K, Dan S, and Michael P. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So speaking of AI, our next headline is another use of AI for good. And the city of Los Angeles is using an AI to help identify people who are at risk of homelessness and then intervening before they lose their home. And so what they do is they have a set of data that comes in from, I think they said 17 different government agencies, and they use an AI to sift through it to identify people on, emergency room visits, crisis care for mental health, substance abuse disorder diagnosis, arrests, and signups for public benefits like food aid. And then using machine learning, it's the magic phrase, using machine learning, it comes up with a list of people considered most at risk for losing their homes. And then they have specialists contact them and offer them money, basically aid that will help them pay rent, take care of these, various things that are threatening their ability to stay in a home, because it costs a lot less to keep a person in their home than it is to get someone off the street into a home. So if an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, is the old saying. And the article profiles several different people who the program has helped with, thousands of dollars for rent, utilities, to pay, hospital bills, even things like paycheck loans. Now, they don't give the money directly to the people. They give them to a third-party vendor who pays their bills for them to prevent abuse and to make sure things go where they're intended to go and to help to be actually helpful. One of the things I found interesting about it was how hard it was to convince some people that they just wanted to give them a bunch of money to help them out, which is kind of sad too, as well. What do you think of this one, Pat?
Well, I was struck by that same thing, that the people that were called often thought it was a scam, often thought it was a too good to be true, it's got to be a hook. And yeah, so I mean, in some ways we're training people to be more careful about the calls that they get, et cetera. But it is sad that, that they really thought that that wasn't really intended for them. It really was a fake.
Right. And refused. They wouldn't take the money at all.
Well, Yeah, that is a shame. But I like the idea of trying to predict and help people before it gets too bad. I know Rehabilitation Commission, that's one of the things that they always strive to do, is to try to train somebody to try to get them back into work, to prevent the people being on the dole or on, without resources. And that's harder, and, better to get the money in taxes while they're working than the money just going out because somebody needs help and has no resources. So
right.
It's the same type of principle.
Yeah, one of the people they profile in this is this guy who's a 65-year-old retired handyman who went on disability when he had an injury back when he was in his 40s. He's been barely getting by in a one-bedroom apartment in L.A. And then his ex-wife died a year ago, and she had been raising their 3 teenage grandsons because their daughter was addicted to drugs. And so now he's had to take in the boys, and he's been struggling. Yeah. He said, I had a little money put away, but boy, I went through it because these kids eat, which raising 2 teenage boys, I can tell you they do. And like they're in a one bedroom apartment. So he's got 3 bunk beds in his living room with all their stuff, and so this program identified the problem. It saw a number of these things come up. They send a case manager out. He talks to them. What do you need? And he's trying to get them a new place, get them a housing voucher, walking through it. And he's like, he used to get food stamps to help feed the kids, but that stopped a while ago, and he's not sure why. And the caseworker figured out it's probably paperwork, so we'll help him with that. And you think, like, there's a lot of help out there. We provide a lot of assistance to people who need help, but there's so much bureaucracy, so much red tape. People don't know, people mishandle it, make mistakes on it, and it stops. I mean,
give up.
Yeah. I mean, we have 5 kids, and we have them we have to do tons of paperwork just for our 5 kids in this middle-class situation. And it is tough to keep track of it all and to do it all. And there's so many papers and so much stuff to fill
Deadlines.
out. I can imagine, a single 65-year-old man who's been retired having to suddenly take care of all this stuff. You got to feel like you're in over your head and drowning. So, he's happy to have the help. It hasn't taken away all his stress and worries, of course. I can tell you that. It sounds like a good man trying to do right by his grandsons, and but it's a huge help, and so I'm glad to see it. I hope it can grow and be duplicated, and that it remains efficient, that it doesn't become just another giant, bureaucracy burning money either. That's the other thing. But yeah. I love the idea of using technology to keep people from becoming homeless, from it getting worse, because homelessness is a huge issue right now, all over.
Right.
Speaking of Meta, by the way, back to Meta, because everything keeps coming back to them. They have floated a proposal to charge $14 a month for ad-free Instagram or Facebook in Europe, not everywhere. And this is to comply with a very specific European Union law, which requires social media companies to offer an ad-free content for users who don't want them to use their digital activity to target ads. And this is what Facebook does. This is their entire model is we follow you around, and we dig into your everything about you, and we try to serve you ads based on it. And of course, nobody really likes that. And so their proposal is, if someone wants to do this, then it costs us about 10 euros a month to of ads to support each user. So you can just pay that and get away with it. They would charge slightly more for ad free on your phone instead of on the desktop, because they say Apple and Google have to take their cut, which I'm not sure that's necessarily true, because Amazon managed to negotiate lower costs for their in-app stuff. So I don't know. It's with Apple. So I don't know if that's necessarily true. What do you think of this? Would you pay $14 a month for ad-free that they're not tracking you?
I'm not sure that I would do that much. That's an awful lot. I mean, I'm being nickeled and dime on paywalls for news and all sorts, and increased streaming costs and a lot of things. I'm pretty good at ignoring all the ads. But on the other hand, I know, like, I won't watch free TV because I cannot stand the ads on that, and I am willing to pay. Yeah. So maybe if Facebook meant more to me, I might be more willing to pay more per month for that. But yeah, it's just getting to the point where we're paying a lot of money for virtual information or virtual rights. Mm-hmm. Than we are for physical stuff anymore. That's right. And I just feel like, I don't know. I think a lot of people, Facebook and Instagram are not something they'd be willing to pay for. They just, it's not it's not a priority. It's not a priority. Again, like you say, everything else is already, costing us stuff. We're paying for all of the other entertainment. I don't get enough out of Facebook or Instagram to justify
that. Now, they're not saying that the ad-supported version would go away, but if you don't want to get digitally tracked, then you can pay us. Is basically what they're saying.
If it's optional, it's
Yeah.
reasonable. Yeah. Now, if they just start increasing the ads because they've got this ad-free tier, then that's a problem. But I don't see how they can increase it any worse than it is.
No kidding. There are times when it feels like that's all my feed is right now. But and it is not. This is their proposal. The EU could come back and say, no, you have to offer a free no ad version for people which I don't know how they could do that, because that would basically put them out of business, like
bankrupt. Yeah,
because they got to make some money from something. So I'm not sure how that would be possible. So it would probably be something somewhere in between. And again, it's the EU only, although the US could make a law too. But we'll see. I just feel like Facebook is more likely to go away than it is to make it transition to a paid service like a Netflix or a Disney Plus, that sort of thing. I don't get as much entertainment out of Facebook as I do out of Netflix and Disney Plus. So I'm more likely to keep those.
Well, and didn't I hear where X was planning on doing $1 a month just to try to prevent a lot of the spam accounts?
Yes.
They figured that customers might be willing to do $1 a month, and that could cut down the amount of fake accounts.
The spam bots, there's so many thousands of them, tens of thousands of them on there, that for the spammers, they'd be paying thousands and thousands of dollars a month for these accounts. But for me, as an individual, it's $1. Would I pay $1 for Twitter? I might. I don't use Twitter all that much anymore. I find it to be a time sink, like all the others. So I might keep my Twitter account active for $1 a month, but I don't know if I would. Well, I would pay $1, like StarQuest would pay $1 a month to keep our account active. I know that we'd do that, just because we know some of our audience is there. But I'm not sure if I would even pay $1 to keep Twitter.
I wouldn't personally, because I just don't use it.
Yeah.
About once every 6 months, I go over and look and see if there's anything that's important, and there's not.
There's not. Nope.
The only thing I really found a use for it was during the time of severe weather warnings. Our local weather people have an X or Twitter account, and I can see when tornadoes are coming, and that's kind of nice.
During breaking news events, I go to Twitter. That's a fact, actually. I do use Twitter for that, because people are reporting what they're seeing. You're getting more of what's going on, or at least a feel for what's going on, for people who are there. So I do use it for that. And I have to be honest, I do miss things from Twitter. There are interesting people I was following on Twitter that I liked what they had to say, but it just came with too much of a cost of time for me that I wanted to spend reading books and spending time with my family and that sort of thing, and not sitting there scrolling through Twitter. And I have to, but it's true confession time. I have a FOMO problem where I don't like, if I've scrolled to a certain point in my feed, I want to start from there and not miss any tweets that I may scroll past. Like, I hate but I'm perpetually behind, like, by thousands of tweets. I'm like, and then you're like, I grit my teeth, declare Twitter feed bankruptcy, and scroll up 1,000, 2,000, tweets, and then start from there or whatever. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm not actually enjoying this. I'm enduring this. Why am I doing that? And then I stopped reading Twitter on a regular basis. But I do go and I share and retweet the posts for our shows. And while I'm there, I look at the Twitter. What is it? Twitter has a feed for not mentions, but like suggested activity. It's their algorithm, basically, which is the notifications all, where they highlight tweets that you're likely to be interested in based on their algorithm, and I'll look through some of those. But in general, I wouldn't pay $1 a month for that.
Well, and I have the opposite way of doing Twitter. I'll go and look at the most recent stuff down for a couple of weeks and then I'll get off. I don't care of anything earlier than that. I don't try to catch up.
Yeah. So then we have our last headline, and this is one that you shared with us, Pat. You noticed it. The headline is Default Windows 11 feature slows SSDs by up to 45%. Here's how to fix it. And the story is that there is a feature activated by default in Windows 11 Pro that causes the solid-state drives to perform worse, to be slower, and that there's a way to turn that off. Pat, why don't you describe what's going on here?
Right. Well, encryption is a big thing these days with privacy and fear of data theft. And so with Windows 11, you can opt in. Same thing with Windows 10, some versions. You can opt in to Bitlocker. But on Windows 11 Pro, it's assumed you want Bitlocker. And Bitlocker is full drive encryption. And I checked out on a Mac, File Vault or encryption is using a different chip than your normal stuff. Mm-hmm. And on Windows, it's not. It's sharing time. Right. And so therefore, that's what's causing a lot of these SSD drives to have a flailing performance because it's doing a lot of work. And SSD drives don't work as well when they're being written and rewritten and stuff like that. They tend to have more problems. So quite frankly, on any machine that I get on, if Bitlocker is turned on, I talk to the people and suggest they turn it off, whether or not it's 11 or 10, because we have more problems with helping people recover from a broken computer than that we do with people having their data stolen.
Right.
And so anytime you have an encrypted drive and the machine breaks, you can't just take out the drive and put it in another machine and recover their data.
Right.
It's
gone.
It's just not possible. It's gone. So I hate Bitlocker because of that, because I've had more cases of people who flat out just couldn't get their data back.
Right. And most people do not have so much sensitive data that they need to encrypt the whole drive. And,
right.
And especially if you're in a laptop, that's one thing. You're carrying it around. You could leave it in a public place and maybe someone could, take out the drive and suck your data down. But especially if it's like on a desktop computer, you especially don't need to have your BitLocker on because it's in your office or in your home. I mean, the odds of it getting stolen from there are so low. Your odds of losing your data by having it encrypted are much higher.
Worse.
Is what Pat is saying.
Yeah.
So I agree with that one. Now that said, I leave File Vault on my Macs when I get them because it's unnoticeable. In the early days, it was noticeable. It was slower with File Vault on versus not. But nowadays, like you say, they have the T2 chip. It's a dedicated chip on the motherboard because Apple makes the hardware and the software. So they have it's you don't even notice it. Now there is still the danger that if something happens to that T2 chip, you might lose your data. So this is why whether you're on a Mac or a PC and whether you have hardware encryption on or not, you need good backups for everything in more than one place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah. And typically with a laptop, you're carrying it around, so there is a little bit more risk. And they're usually SSD drives because that's what's being put in. And you can't take that drive out.
Right.
And recover it. That's the other thing, is that with the older PCs, and especially with SATA drives, it's real easy to pull the drive and recover the data. And when you're talking about SSDs in a sealed laptop, that's becoming less likely.
Right. They're chips soldered to the motherboard. They're not a separate drive. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, folks, if you're running Windows 10 or 11, especially if you're running Windows 11 Pro, this article that we'll link in the show notes shows you how to look and see if you are affected by it, if it's BitLocker is on, and then talks about how to turn it off to prevent it if that's something you choose to do. So,
and the only comment I would like to make is if you do find that you want to turn it off, don't turn off the machine immediately after you've done that setting, because it's got to go through the drive and unencrypt it.
Right.
And it doesn't take a huge amount of time, but you don't want it partially unencrypted.
Right. That's bad. That is bad.
You lose data that way.
Yes. Let it finish unencrypting, let it sit for a bit and work it over. And then you can go about your business as usual.
Right. You can always go back to the place that you turn it on or off, and you can see the progress at that point.
Yes. Very good. Excellent. So those are all our headlines. And I think we had a good batch of headlines this week, and I thought it was a very interesting and useful discussion. Now let's move on to our picks of the week. And Pat, you're up first. What is your pick this week?
Well, we do so much talking about Apple. I decided that, today with the Bitlocker, also I decided that my pick of the week was going to be something for Windows users. There are always problems when you get computer programs and you download Adobe or you download some utilities like OpenOffice or whatever, that if they get out of date, then they become vulnerable to exploits, etc. And I've been using one program called Nanite for a while that would go through everything that it found on your computer and look to see whether it could get updates. I found this new program I say new, but it's just new to me. It's called Patch My PC, and I checked it out, and it was designed by actually former Microsoft engineers, and it's so it's not just somebody in their home garage doing it, but basically it goes through and up on a home computer. It's free. And they look at up to 300 different packages that you could have installed on your machine. And like today, I ran it on my main Windows machine, and it found 14 programs that were capable of being updated that I had. And it found 4 of them that needed some patches that I had missed. So I felt really good. And what it does is it does a silent method of going and getting the update, applying it silently, not with all of the, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want to subscribe to our newsletter? Do you want to put this in a different place? It just does it for you.
Nice.
And so I've run it on a couple of machines now, and I like it. So I thought maybe this might be helpful for some of our people that they don't have a techie in their household to help them keep stuff up to date. And this is, you just download it and run it.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, it's similar to a previous pick of the week that I had for the Mac called Mac Updater. Does the same thing.
Right.
And just updates in place. And it's awesome. It really is awesome. I was looking at the laptop that I let the kids use for their schoolwork, and I'm like, oh, I need to update 13 different programs on this PC,
right.
on this Mac. So, yeah, it is really helpful to have something like that. That's great. And it's free.
Right.
Mac Updater costs something. So that's something where the Windows is up on the Mac.
Well, they get their money from the businesses that use it.
Oh, okay.
And so, and that's why they're willing to give it away free for home, figuring that the people from home are going to say, hey, I'm doing this on my home network or my home PCs. Let's use it this office.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So my pick is also platform agnostic. In fact, it's a tip. And this tip is basically, sometimes you want to share a link to something on Amazon, a product, you want to put it on social media or share it in a Discord or in a family chat or something like that. And, the Amazon URLs can be very long, and sometimes they have all this extra stuff at the end because when you search for it and it puts all that in there, it's a mess. So one thing you can do is you can make a short Amazon link really easily. They give you a way to do that. So just bring up a product page of any product, and on a desktop, in a window browser on a desktop or laptop, look to the top right of the main image, and you'll see the standard sharing icon, which is usually like a box with an arrow coming out of the top of it. And when you click on it, it will give you several different ways to share it: email, Pinterest, Facebook, X, meaning Twitter, and copy link. And if you hit copy link, you get a short URL. It's an, Amazon.
Bitly?
It's an a.co. So Amazon paid somebody a lot of money to get a.co. And so it's a.co and then a handful of letters following it that will bring you back to this exact product. Same thing on a phone and an app. You look to the top right of the image and you'll see that same icon. You tap on it, and it's a little harder to get the touch target on that. But if you have an Amazon Associates account, which I do, it will offer the associate link, which is really actually kind of handy. I didn't know that was there. Or you could share a non-associates link. If you don't have an associates account, then it'll probably just give you the regular. Yeah, it'll just give you the regular stuff that I just mentioned to share. So,
Cool.
yeah, so it's a nice way to just share links. And, Christmas is coming up soon. You may be thinking of making a Christmas list and maybe needing to share some links with your loved ones. This is one way to do it.
Well, I appreciate it too, because there's a lot of times clients will ask me things and I'll point to particular products, and the URL that I have to give them right now, I'm just going to the product page, calling up that product, copying the whole thing out of the header.
Yeah.
This will be a lot better.
Yeah. It makes your emails neater, your texts or whatever, without these long URLs. So it's a small little tip, but I find it useful, and hopefully you will too. Great. And so that's our show for today. We would love to hear what you think of anything that we talked about today. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. You can find links from our discussion and our picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC232. We don't have Amazon money, so we can't buy like s.fm or whatever. We had to get starquest.fm, which actually I think is a pretty cool one anyway. starquest.fm/TEC232. Folks, be sure to write a review of the show in Apple Podcast. Please, if you haven't done so before, it is really crazy helpful. It really is. And we don't get very many of them, but it's really helpful if you can write a review in Apple Podcasts or anywhere you can give us reviews or rankings or that sort of stuff. It is incredibly helpful when you do that. And share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this great community of listeners. It is really grown by leaps and bounds. We get so much great feedback from all of you, and we really do appreciate it. So until next time, Pat Scott, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Good to be here.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.